Okay, being the second video of the day, we're going to talk about something else that somebody sent me. And this is an interesting one. This is, again, 13th day of August 2024. Now it is 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I said the other day, I was talking about Glenn Greenwald and what a piece of shit Glenn Greenwald is. For saying that, well, there's no possibility of a two-state solution in Gaza because, and because the West Bank, there are settlers who've moved in and they got TVs and Xboxes, and then he went on. That's literally what he fucking did. That's because it would be inconvenient to some settler types to be kicked out of fucking the West Bank, out of their stolen fucking land. I showed you in that video that's exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu says, and Ben Giver says, and all the rest of them, and Smotrich and all the rest of them. And of course, it's fucking laughable. It's ridiculous. But I told you that he is more dangerous as someone from the inside, the alt-left, the alternative left. He is more, his bullshit, his propaganda is more dangerous than Fox News or Sky News or MSNBC or CNN or New York Times or Washington Post. Okay? Because he has plot armor. He has cover. They say, well, but he's been so good on the issue for so fucking long. If he says that it can't be done, well, I guess it can't be done. We got to figure out something else. And what is the other thing? If it's not a two-state solution, they're not talking about a 5-state solution. They're talking about a 1-state solution. And what do you call that 1 state? What do you call that 1 state? What's it called? To anybody out there who believes in that shit, what the fuck is it called? Is it called Palestine? Do you honestly think Israel will be wiped off the map and they will call it Palestine? No. It will be called Israel. Oh, but then they can be full citizens. And are Arabs full citizens in Israel now? Are Christians? But it's going to change. No, it's not going to change. Besides, that means Palestine has been wiped off the map. The two-state solution is not a solution. It is a reality. It already exists. According to 145 nations in the United Nations, of the United Nations, 192. The United Nations sees Palestine as an observer state. So, it's not a solution, it's the reality. And Glenn Greenwald is using his influence with the alt-left, with the pro-Palestinian crowd, to push Zionist propaganda. And I told you that is the most offensive. However, it is also extremely common. And as big as Glenn Greenwald is, you get a bunch of that even on smaller scales. This is a part of a Facebook group or WhatsApp. It's WhatsApp, I think. This is somebody who runs this organization, this group, SPHR, which is the Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights from Fraser Valley. There's an individual who pretty much runs it named Philip. Now, I've tried to hide anything. Don't contact anybody from these fucking places. That's not what this is about. I want to show you something. I want to show you what disinformation looks like in real time. I was yelling in the previous video about Glenn Greenwald and about anybody who comes along and pretends they're going to be on your fucking side so that they can undermine the group in many different ways. They've been undermining this group in many different ways. Breaking people off. Trying to exclude people rather than include people based on race of all things. Okay? Deliberately undermining the size and scope and reach and effectiveness of this organization. And it sounds to me like at one point in time there was a car rally which some estimated as many as 200 fucking cars, 300 cars. Now they couldn't put together one with 20. And that's bringing together this organization and one in fucking neighboring Vancouver. 20 they couldn't get. Why? Because they have been undermining and irritating people and pushing them away for various reasons. Various reasons. None of which have anything to do with the Palestinian plight. They have been deliberately torpedoing the pro-Palestine movement in the Fraser Valley and surrounding Vancouver. Why? Well, I'll show you why. But first, we've lost everything for what? This is an article from 972 magazine. 972 magazine, funded by the George Soros' Open Society Foundation, among others. But this is an organization that writes Palestinian supportive stuff in mainstream media rags and mainstream alt rags like Salon and Guardian and shit like that. Okay? They are a controlled 972 mag. Is a controlled opposition or controlled alternative site. This is the article we're talking about. And the takeaway from this article is Palestinians in Gaza are willing to pay a price for liberation, but many question the rationale and lack of forethought behind Hamas's October attack. What are they saying? What's become clear over the past 10 months is that the Palestinian leadership, both Fatah and Hamas, have abandoned the people without any forethought or a coherent plan. While Gazans face relentless Israeli bombardment with no safe place to turn to, Hamas evades a responsibility to protect the population, and Fatah is nowhere to be found. No argument about Fatah. 100% argument with Hamas. This individual's main thrust of this is Hamas is not supported by the people of Gaza. And so Hamas should be regime changed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is what Philip posted just the other day to his Fraser Valley Solidarity for the Palestinian Human Resistance, a human rights organization. A solidarity group. That's what he posted. Because this individual supposedly is a Palestinian, the guy who wrote this. There's a lot of Palestinians, boys and girls, who don't stand up for Palestine. There are a lot of Palestinians who are very happy to assist the IDF in Israel and Shin Bet and Mossad. Not that, don't know that that's what he has done or hasn't done, but he left Gaza in April. And as soon as he did, he started a career writing shit like this. Talking about the fact that Hamas needs to be regime changed. Well, that's the exact same thing. By the way, boys and girls, Hamas's regime change is the exact same thing that, Benjamin Netanyahu talks about. And as they're getting closer to being forced into a deal, Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu. By the way, all kinds of articles from Haaretz and Times of Israel and Jerusalem Post the last week about the people of Israel are getting sick. Everyone knows. It's his own political fucking ambitions and self-serving attitude, his self-serving ambitions. Bibi Netanyahu understands once this thing is over with, there's going to be investigations into what really happened on October the 7th. And he's going to be gone. There's already calls for snap elections. There's already calls for a vote of no confidence. He's gone. And as soon as he's out of office, he's got people arresting him, Israelis arresting him, not for what happened with the ICJ, the ICC, but for crimes he committed before he got to office. And some while he was in office. So the longer he keeps those hostages in Gaza, the longer he can avoid accountability for his crimes. And everyone in Israel knows it. But what's one of the big things he pushes? When he's not bombing people who are the chief negotiators trying to bring peace to this and a resolution to this fucking conflict in a foreign country, what is he doing? What is one of his chief fucking, his main points is, Hamas has to go. We got to get rid of Hamas and Fatah and fucking the Palestinian Authority, and we'll find somebody, put together somebody. Maybe this writer thinks he could be one of those people, one of those reasonable voices who can then come in and take over. God damn it. What the fuck? Hang on a second. I'm getting phone calls in every video now. Jesus Christ. I'm so popular. I'm so popular. Listen, again, this is one guy. This might be his own personal fucking opinion about, the people of Gaza don't want Hamas. Hamas is not a terror organization. Hamas took a desperation move along with Palestinian Liberation Organization and other resistance groups in Gaza. It wasn't just Hamas. They want Hamas gone because Hamas stands for resistance, and they did not hand over Gaza just like the Palestinian Authority did and Fatah did. The Israelis tried to bring in Fatah in the election in 2005, even though people told them, you're going to lose. And they did lose. And ever since, we've been trying to regime change Gaza. Anybody, listen, I don't give a fuck who you are. I don't give a fuck if you're Glenn Greenwald. I don't give a fuck if you're fucking Norman Finkelstein. If you try to say, one, there's no possibility for a two-state solution, so you might as well give up and turn all of Palestine into Israel, fuck you. Or two, if you try to say Hamas is a terror organization that killed their own people and we got to regime change them, fuck you twice. Let me show you what we're talking about. If you don't think I know what the fuck I'm talking about, I do. A long time ago, I wrote this, Truth and Consequences, a watershed moment for the rebuilding a movement. I wrote it and published it in 2011. Been talking about this kind of thing for quite some time beforehand. The website 9/11 Blogger has been exposed as heavily controlled opposition site years ago by myself and other well-meaning truth advocates. Heavily controlled, actually. I wouldn't waste my time or yours writing about the goings-on over there, but recently it has come to my attention that Blogger could become a kind of microcosm for the truth movement, which allows us to better understand, one, the well-financed concerted effort which has been leveled against our little movement by those who mean to end speculation and reasoned inquiry about 9/11 once and for all, and two, the resilience of those of us who still demand to know the truth and still dare to speak it. This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about cognitive infiltration. And this, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, Like the other article I posted the other day, I look back at this and go, wow, holy shit, maybe I used to be able to write. Not anymore, but I used to. And I spent a lot of time doing it. This is an interesting article, and I would gladly talk to anybody about it who dares to question what I'm saying on this. And that's fine, you can question it. I have all this evidence in here, all this evidence about 9/11 and what happened on 9/11. And I had to do that so I could get to part 2, 9/11 blogger and the beneficial cognitive diversity of LIHOP. Now, we can talk about LIHOP, we can talk about MyHOP, we can talk about all that shit and all the evidence all day long. I don't care. As I said to that individual, that engineer individual, I don't mind having those conversations, and I'll do them publicly if you like. If you want to debate, we can debate. If you want to converse, we can converse. I don't care about that. We can also converse about this. But there is no debate. Because what Cass Sunstein did and what he laid out is what has been happening to a number of movements over the fucking decades. Now decades. And this is what he wrote. Cass Sunstein writing about the way to deal with conspiracy theorists and organizations. And this, boys and girls, is what he wrote. We can readily imagine a series of possible responses to conspiracy theories and theorists. 1, government might ban conspiracy theorizing. That goes back to what we just heard, the video I just talked about with UK. They're going to be extraditing people and arresting Americans for conspiracy theorizing about what's happening over in the United Kingdom. They might ban conspiracy theorizing. And if they can't do it in the United States because we have constitutional protections, well, the Five Eyes program says we have to help our brothers in UK, and they're not handcuffed by these constitutional rights and amendments. So yeah, we got to extradite them. And is there any kind of, I don't know, is there precedent? Oh yeah, there's Julian Assange. So 1, government might ban conspiracy theorizing. 2, government might impose some kind of tax, financial or otherwise, on those who disseminate such theories. Once again, we talk about, I don't know, Alex Jones's $1 billion fucking lawsuit, or Tucker Carlson being fired, talking about Dominion voting systems, or me and Alex Jones and others being fucking sued in a slap lawsuit. I'm telling you, these things are being played out. They're being done. Let me finish. Let me read this. We suggest, Cass Sunstein suggests, a distinctive tactic for breaking up the hardcore of extremists, there's that word, who supply conspiracy theories. Cognitive infiltration of extremist groups, what they consider pro-Palestinian organizations as extremist groups. Yes, they would. Cognitive infiltration of extremist groups whereby government agents or their allies, either acting virtually or in real space, and either openly or anonymously, will undermine the crippled epistemology of believers by 1, planting doubts about their theories and stylized facts that circulate within such groups, like there's no controlled demolition in 9/11, and 2, introducing beneficial cognitive diversity. Beneficial cognitive diversity. Yes, indeed. There's a problem going on in Palestine, but you're never going to be able to get that fucking 2-state solution, so you might as well give up and turn it into all Israel. But get what you can. Get the right to vote. You'll be fine. They'll treat you just like they treat Jewish civilians. That's beneficial cognitive diversity. So too is Yes, I know, we support Gazans. We support these kids. This is awful. However, Hamas is a terrorist dictatorship organization that's killing its own people and needs to be regime changed. Beneficial cognitive diversity. Continuing, government agents might enter chat rooms, online social networks, or even real space groups in an attempt to undermine percolating conspiracy theories by raising doubts about their factual premises, causal logic, or implications for political action. Now, I have covered the implications for political action a while ago. Beneficial cognitive diversity, this is what I wrote, in a nutshell, is presenting truth advocates with carefully scripted messages designed to drive them back to the official story of 9/11. And I give you examples. This is a good article. It is an in-depth, well thought out article, if I do say so myself. And though you hate to quote yourself, sometimes you have to. I'll post a link to this down below. What this guy is doing, even though he's Palestinian, but as I said, there are many Palestinians who have all sorts of agendas, just like many fucking Ukrainians, just like many fucking Brits, just like many fucking Americans, have all sorts of agendas. Just because they're Palestinian doesn't mean they're necessarily on the side of Palestinians. This dude, Mohammed Mustafa, I'm sorry, I know I didn't pronounce that correctly, but there you go. This dude has written for multiple fucking mainstream media outlets. Norman Finkelstein isn't allowed to do that. And I guarantee you Norman Finkelstein has a better understanding of what's going on in fucking Gaza and the West Bank than this dude does. There's a reason for that. But this guy is. I don't know, I can't tell you that this dude's motivation for promoting a concept that the Zionists and Bibi Netanyahu and Ben Giver and Smotich and all the rest have been promoting, which is we have to regime change Gaza. We have to get rid of the resistance government of Gaza and replace them with somebody who's more friendly, more accepting of Israeli ideas. One of the things that I remember from their negotiations, when they were having negotiations, now they just don't even try to have negotiations. And there's an article on my website from a Jewish periodical, from an Israeli periodical, talking about the fact that there's more information coming out now that Benjamin Netanyahu has been torpedoing these peace negotiations for months, which we knew, and they've been saying this for months. But there's more information. There's more news about that now. It's not the obstacle to peace isn't Hamas. Clearly, without a single fucking shred of doubt, the obstacle to peace is Israel. Is specifically Ben Giver and Smotich and Bibi Netanyahu. There's no question about that. So these individuals, this guy who wrote this article, running around saying that the people of Gaza want him out, want Hamas out, so they can bring in what? The same thing that Benjamin Netanyahu wants. A bunch of Palestinians who are similar to this dude, and similar to Fatah, and similar to Palestinian Authority, who will acquiesce to the IDF, to Israel, to Shin Bet, Mossad. They want to be able to remake the education system. One of the things that Benjamin Netanyahu was saying, that he doesn't want people being able to go back to the north of that fucking Netzarim fucking corridor that they cut across the fucking... He doesn't want Palestinians being able to go back to Gaza City, basically. He wants to reduce the size of Gaza and bust off a piece to hand over to their developers so they can profit from what's happened here, from the genocide of the people of Gaza. That's what this is. This is the kind of shit that this individual is cheering for. Hamas has said that, and so too, by the way, have researchers and writers who have dealt with this subject for decades, have said the same thing. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that Norman Finkelstein has said something similar. And that is, if you want to take out or remove from power a government of resistance, then the best way to do it is not to bomb them, because you're just going to make more people want to resist. The best way to do it is to remove the threats that they have to resist, which means a two-state solution, which means that get all the fucking settler types and settler folks and businesses the fuck out of the West Bank, bust up all the give the land back to the people who own it. Go back to the June 1967 fucking borders that have been recognized by the rest of the world since on June 1967. Give them nothing to resist. Assist them as best you can, as a neighbor state would, like I do with my neighbors. Give them nothing to resist, and their resistance government won't be necessary anymore. And you know who's the most recent organization to suggest that? Hamas. You know, let's agree to recognize each other. Let's agree to the borders. Let's agree to a ceasefire. We return the hostages. You let us open our own fucking borders to whoever we need to open our borders to rebuild ourselves. And we won't need to be here anymore. They won't need to fucking vote for people because they resist the genocide coming from just on the other side of the fucking fence. They won't need to resist the Nazis keeping them in a fucking the world's largest concentration camp. They won't need to resist that because that won't be there. Get rid of that, and the people of Gaza can move on from us with a different group of people, with a different group of fucking politicians who have different visions and ambitions for the future of the country as Palestine. But this is not what he writes. What he writes is basically the same thing that Bibi Netanyahu says. Get rid of fucking Hamas, and then we can come in and we can dictate what happens, just like we dictate what happens in the West Bank. And eventually, this whole idea that was once Palestine, poof, will be gone. And we'll have the one-state solution Glenn Greenwald, that piece of fucking shit, calls for. Do you see how this Cass Sunstein talks about cognitive infiltration, fixing our crippled epistemology, by telling us we can't have two-state solutions? What's wrong with you? No reason for that, he just says it. Fixing our crippled epistemology and bringing us back into the fold. What is the fold? At the end of the day, what is happening in Gaza is a regime change operation. And here, this guy, supposedly in support of Palestinians, promotes by posting that article that very same regime change operation. Now, either Philip is a useful idiot, or He's a follower of Cass Sunstein. And as I told you in that article, in that video about fucking Glenn Greenwald, I take this shit very seriously. Obviously, I have for well over a decade. Because this is damaging. This is detrimental. Not only to movements, but to fucking society itself. Weasels who will do this for their own benefit, for their own advancement, whatever the case may be, have to be exposed. If they're making a mistake, if it is an honest mistake, so be it. Come out and say so. Don't keep pushing this bullshit. My epistemology is just fine. It's not crippled. It's strong. Somebody has a crippled epistemology. It's not us. Anyway, I thank you for your time.